Okay, thanks for joining. We got a couple of, I've always liked this saying. You know, I'm kind of a war buff person myself, you know. I like good war movies, from everything from war movies to dystopian movies that make you think, you know, about the human condition. And one of those pivotal movies was The Thin Red Line. It had Sean Penn in it and a whole bunch of cast of characters. But it was kind of a introspective movie where it made you think about a lot of the things that people take for granted that should make people happy. Yet, you know, the old crucible comes into play where if you don't agree, you know, eventually you're going to go to war. And which is nothing more than wanting to push your will or influence another person forcibly with your will is what war is, technically. But anyway, Thin Red Line had this one pivotal super saying. I mean, it was just embedded with really good psychological tenets that really painted a good picture with me, in a sense. It doesn't have anything religiously to do with anything, but in a general sense, it explains the machinations of a culture, what they stand for, and what they want to get out of other people. It's couched somewhat in the pejorative, and it has a negative context to it. So let's read it here real briefly. And it says, everything is a lie. Everything you hear, everything you see. So much to spew out. So much to spew out. They just keep coming, one after another. You're in a box. We're all in a box. A moving box. They want you dead. Or in their lie. Now, what do we see? The direct result. And this is this is from a movie that came out way back when, a couple decades ago at least. Yeah, 1998. More than a quarter of a century ago. But let's read this again. Everything lie, everything you hear, everything you see, so much to spew out. They just keep coming, one after another. You're in a box, a moving box. They want you dead. Or in their lie. What do we see going on with P. Daddy, Puff Daddy, Sean Combs? The exact same machinations are going on with him. Because all the top tier A-listers, if they didn't go along with his systemic contribution of coercion and be part of that game, that system, that modus operandi that would punk them out, that would steal their testimony. I could use other words, but they're not too palatable. And a lot of them go along with it. A lot of them are being outed right now. A lot of them are coming clean. A lot of them are going against and giving testimony against Sean Diddy. Which after decades and decades, and this just proves another point, is that why did it go on for decades and decades? Why was it covered up? Why was it the 800-pound elephant in the middle of the living room? For decades. It was because people were in on it. And they had to pay their dues, or at least they thought they had to pay their dues, even though they totally dehumanized themselves in the process. They took their own humanity and gave it up in exchange for money, power, people, places, and things. But they were coerced into their positions of being punked out. But yeah, they called it the $20 million club. And that's how you basically, when you make that grade, that you're a made man or a made woman, in that sense, that you can be trusted because you've been so humiliated, and you've taken your humanity and you've given it to them in exchange for money. So it was nothing but a business transaction. Let's read the rest of it. They just keep coming, one after another. You're in a box, a moving box. They want you dead if you don't play their game, or in their lie. In which case, if you play that lie enough times and you give them the keys to your soul, then they'll place you in the $20 million club. You'll be a someone. You'll be an A-lister. You'll be a headliner. You'll be a just creme de la creme, top of the grade. You've made it. That's called being in their lie. So they either want you dead, or in their lie. So either way you go, you can't win. Only one thing a man can do, find something that's his, this is true, it's very lonely, and make an island for himself. If I never meet you in this life, and this is alluding to that special someone that you may or may not meet. Some people are more fortunate than others, that's the way life is. Let me feel the lack, a glance from your eyes, and my life will be yours. What this is saying is that even your faith, no matter what happens, will pay off, because where your heart is, there your treasure will be also. Heart is synonymous with treasure. And this brings us into our next crucible of conversation, because we talked about this roughly before, when yours truly, I got sent to hell. I was not living a very godly life at the time, unfortunately, many years ago. And I was shown in no uncertain terms whatsoever, in this vacuum void vortex of a world, a hideous, grotesque, horrific, and just absolutely horrifying existence. And it's a place. It is a place. I knew that in hell there is no conformity to anything resembling anything good. In hell there is no truth. None. It's kind of a weird concept to get a hold of, but in hell all of that's been taken out. Doesn't exist. No such animal. It's not there. It does not reside there. No truth. Nothing. But you're still alive. In that absence of truth, that comes out to nothing but abject, unbridled horror and terror and loneliness. Loneliness like a pack of lions that are sucking on the marrow out of the bones, out of your bones, trying to, words just don't even do any kind of justice. But see, here's the point, is that when we're here on earth, and first I'll kind of give the example of Stephen Hawking. When Stephen Hawking was alive, the guy was a consummate genius. When it came to astrophysics, he was a genius, but he's also an atheist. He was an avowed atheist. Here's the point, is that in this life, we are all kind of squatters, kind of like squatters. We occupy a certain amount of time, space, longevity, etc., etc. That's all we are. We're just a bunch of squatters. But the tender of service that we communicate on is either what equals the truth or what does not equal the truth. And it's in such mundane, seemingly unnoticeable things. Like if you're driving your car and the light turns yellow, you know to slow down and stop because it's going to be a red light. So you stop. That is observing truth. Or if you write on a piece of paper, even for astrophysicists, the guy I just mentioned, Stephen Hawking, every time that he wrote out on his computer, telepathically, I don't know how he did it, 1 and 1, for an example, 1 and 1 equals 2. That is giving credence, whether he never admitted it, but he was giving credence directly to Jesus Christ, whether he realized it or not. So, anytime in this life when we do that, or we say, oh, you're right, then you're attesting to the truth, whatever that is, if it happens to be right. But many times what people do, for many people, is they become so self-absorbed that they start worshiping themselves as their own God. They don't one day wake up and decide, I'm going to do that. But over a period of time, it just becomes inherent in the way they think, they feel, or they opinionate. And that's what happens. So these people are out there, and whether they're worshiping, the worst case scenario, worshiping themselves as their own God, or they may not even, they totally disregard God as completely out of hand, they just don't give any credence to God. But they still have to stop at those red lights. They still have to acknowledge that 1 and 1 equals 2 and all of those different things. They still begrudgingly have to give credence to Jesus Christ, because Jesus Christ is in all truth. Like he said, he is the way, the truth, and the life. So people, even a lot of Christians, they think, well, I've got Jesus all day long. It says to worship God in spirit and in truth, and they may not worship God in truth. So the rejoinder is, how can they be on the way thinking they have the truth in order to get to Christ, which is the life? They have to have the Spirit. They have to have the truth. When a person has the Spirit, then they have the truth. Then they have Jesus Christ. Usually in that order. But there's going to be a lot of people that were, again, squatters on this earth for X amount of years, that all they cared about was themselves. Well, look, God, I observed all those blinking signals, and I always stopped at the stoplight, and I was a good person. I always did many miraculous things for other people. I was rich. I gave away a lot of money. And the Lord's going to say one of two things. I never knew you. Depart from me. Actually, one of three things. Or for the people that are the religious type, look at all the miracles we did, Lord. Look at all the orphanages we built. Look at all these things that we did, Lord. Look at all our work. And he'll say, I know not from whence ye are. Depart from me, O workers of iniquity. Because it was done in the wrong spirit is why. I was in this other accident. Not that what I'm talking to you about hell was an accident. It wasn't an accident. I deserved to be there, and I yelled out the name Jesus. It was given as a gift. But anyway, I've been in a few accidents. One accident hit a patch of black ice, northern Indiana. I had a 396 Chevy Super Sport at the time. Bad to the bone. And it hit some ice, fishtailed down a ravine. I saw my whole entire life like a kaleidoscope. Every thought, every word, every action, every deed, everything. And it was like when it was slow motion. And I knew it's almost hard to believe that it's happening when you're in that situation. But then you're trying to come to grips with the fact that it did happen. And when you hit the bottom of the ravine, then you know it happened. And my head bounced back up. I got a scar over my right eye to this day. That's where if it would have hit my eye a half inch lower, this is when I was in high school, I would have lost my sight, but thank God it didn't. But yeah, I saw every single word, action, deed, every thought in a slow motion, but in the fact of it, the whole thing being in slow motion, but the kaleidoscope was seeing everything that I had ever thought or did or whatever. That was mind-blowing. I don't even have words to describe it. It was mind-blowing. And then my head hit the steering wheel, it bounced up. I was in a little bit of shock, and I was feeling up around here, and I was thinking, man, why is it was dark out. Why do I have water coming from my forehead like that? That's strange. I've had a lot of operations. I was having my tonsillitis and adenoids taken out when I was in high school. They said I was a little bit too old for it, but I said, I don't care. It's causing me problems. Just do it. And they did. And the two dentists botched the operation. And the next thing, it was like a pop. And then in the corner of the office, of the dentist office, I was hovering. Don't laugh. And I was looking down at these two dentists, and the two dentists were going nuts. They were running around and just, very agitated. And it was a feeling of just freedom. It was like, wow, this is cool. And then that went on for some time, and all of a sudden I remember feeling just this blackness. And then, one of the nurses put some, what do you call that stuff when you put it under your nose? I forget the name of it, but it makes pneumonia. Put it under my nose, cracked that little I forget what you call it, that little vial, and that it was like, whoa. And I woke up in this wall of pain, and I couldn't talk for about a week and a half. I was eating nothing but ice cubes, and my brother was trying to get me to laugh. I remember that. And I ate some ice cream too. That was nice. But here's the fact of the matter. Is that Jesus Christ, a lot of people think of Jesus Christ as a rock star, okay? But they're thinking, well, I can think of him as a rock star because he's just on a smorgasbord, like the Pope says. There are many pathways to God. And John Hagee says, well, they're saved under their covenant, talking about the 6-point stars, and the Christians are saved under their covenant. Both of these two people, the Pope and John Hagee, are liars. They're not telling you what the truth is. They're just as bad. They need to repent. Pray for them. Pray for them. They're going to have a rude awakening. But it's true. Jesus Christ permeates everything in reality. We'll even take it a step further. If it doesn't exist, then Jesus Christ didn't make it. That's why it doesn't exist. But if it exists, then everything in life has a certain reason for being. And humans, we have the capacity to take the right path or not the right path, to make the right decision or not make the right decision. But that's what Jesus Christ is. Everything that is true pertains to the kingdom and or Jesus Christ. Everything that is not true does not pertain to the kingdom, does not pertain to Jesus Christ, and is of the devil. And it's good to see now that the devil is in court. The devil is being tried. Let's hope and pray that this branches out into other areas of life in this world. Pray that happens. If you're running out there, please stay running. Keep going to the Word. Keep getting familiarized with the Word. Keep doing good things. Keep pertaining to the truth. Once you get disciplined, then you start to enjoy things. And it doesn't matter what comes at you in the world, because, it still goes back to that one worldly principle of they all want you dead or in a box or in their lie. They want you dead, in a box, or in their lie. Let's all pertain to the truth, which is Jesus Christ. And then you get to live forever. I love you guys. Stay in the fight. We'll talk soon.